Although she had been diligently taught the basics of magic by Alan, Tina felt disappointed in herself for not showing any development at all. Meanwhile, Ellie was developing and always receiving praise. Little by little, Tina's emotions accumulated until they finally exploded, causing Tina to unconsciously activate her magic very fiercely. This made Alan puzzled about the reason Tina's magic suddenly activated and went berserk. Then, Alan asked Ellie to quickly call Graham, while Alan tried to stop the snowstorm created from Tina's emotions. Unfortunately, Alan's magic couldn't stop it. Moreover, Alan felt a bad feeling weighing on his heart. Alan couldn't understand it. Therefore, Alan was forced to decide to use his secret magic. After that, Alan made sure his voice was heard first by Tina, who was contemplating inside a chunk of ice. Then, Alan explained that Tina's mana was going berserk, and that it could threaten Tina's life. Alan explained that he would connect his mana to Tina's mana, so that Alan could control Tina's mana, because Alan had previously succeeded in doing this with others.
では行きます。
わかりました。
他人に自分の魔力を委ねる。
Although Alan's magic would connect their lives, Alan preferred this path to save Tina. Fortunately, Alan succeeded in finding Tina, who was lost in thought. Immediately, Alan pulled Tina out of the mental shackles of thinking she was a family disgrace. After that, an ice bird emerged from Tina's body. Before disappearing, the ice bird left a message that it had finally found a key. Then, the ice storm slowly weakened. So, Alan immediately used his fire magic to melt the chunk of ice and free Tina from the ice's grip.
Tina!
Alan was very grateful that Tina was safe. However, Alan's inner voice made Tina feel a little disturbed, because Alan forgot to disconnect the mana link that had briefly connected them. When Alan asked Tina to go with him to pick up Ellie, Tina asked Alan to accompany her for a moment. Not long after, Ellie and Graham arrived. Ellie looked very happy because Tina had successfully been saved. Even Graham was very grateful to Alan. After successfully saving Tina, Alan remembered a message Lydia had once written for him. In the letter, Lydia emphasized that Alan was forbidden from doing a certain thing with anyone else. This made Alan have to think extra hard to find a reason. Suddenly, Alan fainted from exhaustion. After Alan regained consciousness, Alan explained that mana synchronization had drained his energy, because Alan couldn't withstand the connected thoughts and feelings. Nevertheless, Alan only needed a short rest to recover. However, Tina looked annoyed with Alan, because Tina remembered that Alan called her Your Highness when connecting their mana. Tina emphasized that Alan didn't need to call her that. Then, Alan explained some things about his abilities, where Alan could control the mana of someone connected to him, and Alan could now freely connect and disconnect mana with Tina. Tina remembered that Alan said he had done it with someone else, and that other person was surely Lydia. Alan emphasized that he currently held the lives of 3 people in his hands, namely Tina, Lydia, and Alan's sister. Therefore, Alan asked Tina to keep his power a secret, because this power was very dangerous and couldn't be used carelessly. That night, Alan immediately tried to find out about the ice bird that appeared in Tina's body, because surely that bird was related to Tina's blocked magic. The next morning arrived. Graham was seen showing them a new training building for them to practice magic. This made Alan happy, because the place was quite spacious. So, Alan immediately asked Tina to activate her magic. But what happened? The magic Tina used didn't just freeze the candle medium. Instead, Tina created a towering ice cliff that destroyed the building's roof. This surprised them, because Tina's power was actually that great. This also made Alan think that the ice bird residing in Tina's body played a role in manifesting her power. It even stopped interfering when Tina tried to activate her magic. Besides that, the mana connection slightly influenced Tina in controlling her magic. Therefore, Alan decided to guide Tina in controlling her mana. Suddenly, Tina hugged Alan because she was so happy she could use magic. Even Ellie cried at Tina's success. Alan explained that he had to report Tina's progress to Walter. Tina and Ellie would soon be ready to enter the Royal Academy. Unfortunately, Walter was currently away on important business. After successfully breaking through Tina's stagnation, Alan reported it to the professor. Not forgetting, Alan subtly hinted that the professor was someone who potentially got into debt from gambling. But Alan's success made the professor and his junior very happy. Besides that, the professor was a little surprised by Alan's request, because the military-grade ice protection scroll was a difficult item to acquire. The search for information regarding the ice bird had still not yielded results for Alan up to now. Then, when Alan opened another book, Alan found the same symbol again, like when he read a book in the library. This made Alan confused, because every book with the symbol was one Alan had examined. After noting his report, Alan immediately returned to teach Ellie and Tina. First, Alan asked Ellie to try dark magic. Alan explained that Ellie needed to clearly imagine the dark magic in her mind. Ellie immediately glanced at the black cat. So, Ellie succeeded in mastering dark magic. Next, when Alan asked Tina to activate her magic, Alan asked Tina to control the mana she would release. However, the magic Tina released still soared high, even though Tina had actually controlled her mana. Then, when Alan praised Ellie again, Tina immediately expressed her sadness to Alan, who was always gentle with Ellie and somewhat neglected Tina. In other words, showing favoritism. Alan explained that he didn't differentiate anyone, because learning magic wasn't a place to be pampered. Besides, Tina was the woman who broke the roof every day. However, Tina still looked annoyed. This reminded Alan of someone, namely Lydia, and Alan just realized it had been a long time since Lydia sent him a letter. This time, Alan gave Ellie a sparring session, where Ellie's opponent was Graham. The battle between grandson and grandfather before his eyes amazed Alan, because their movements were very efficient. They didn't have any wasted movements. Tina explained that the Howard family servants always trained every day to better serve their family. Then it was Tina's turn for training. But it wasn't sparring, rather practicing mana control. That night, Graham was very grateful and expressed his happiness to Alan, because Alan had helped Tina use magic, and Ellie developed rapidly. Alan explained that it was all thanks to their hard work. Then, Alan revealed that he felt Walter seemed to be avoiding him. Graham explained that Walter was busy and didn't have time. Then, Alan asked Graham to tell him who owned the symbol on the last page of the book Alan had examined. Unfortunately, Alan didn't get any answer. When Alan was seriously trying to understand the books with the symbol, the ice bird appeared, conveying that it had found a key. Suddenly, Tina and Ellie came to Alan's room because they couldn't sleep. So, Alan gave them tea that could soothe them. Then, Alan asked them not to be noisy, because Alan was researching something. But not long after, Tina and Ellie fell asleep. The next morning arrived. There, Graham informed them that Walter wanted to meet Alan. After arriving at Walter's office, Walter explained that he had thought long and hard about forbidding Tina from taking the Royal University entrance exam. This made Alan a little angry, so Alan asked Walter for his reason, because Alan could make Tina pass the exam with the highest score. Walter explained that Tina's progress made him happy. However, Walter believed Tina would be a burden to many people at the academy later. Then, there was another reason Walter didn't need to explain his decision. This made Alan angry, because Walter had underestimated his intelligence. Therefore, Alan emphasized that Walter had failed to see the bigger picture, because all this concerned the wish of Howard's wife, Rosa. This surprised and intrigued Walter about Alan, who was nobody in his family. Alan explained that just by looking at Walter's archives, Alan already knew Walter's intention. Then, the books with the symbol were actually clues from Rosa, and that meant Rosa wanted to help Tina develop her talent. Rosa even believed someone would replace her to help Tina. As proof, Alan showed Walter the symbol Rosa had left. Clearly, this surprised Walter greatly. So, Walter retracted his decision and gave Tina a chance, on the condition that both of them must pass Walter's final exam, where Walter would witness their abilities directly. Walter would even invite a great wizard to test Tina and Ellie's abilities.
僕の自慢の生徒なんですから。僕はティナもエリーも合格できると信じて。
Before the final exam, Alan tested their teamwork with a 2 versus 1 battle against Alan. Yeah, Tina and Ellie's combination almost managed to defeat Alan. However, Tina's comment that she would win the fight made Ellie a little upset and reminded Tina. This caused their attention to be slightly diverted, leading to their defeat. Nevertheless, Alan still praised their progress. Then Alan asked them to keep practicing, because the powerful wizard chosen by Walter might use high-level magic when fighting them. Therefore, Alan would teach them everything they needed to know. After practicing, Tina and Ellie decided to take a bath. There, Tina wondered if they could be cohesive during the final exam. Ellie felt uncertain about her abilities. Then Tina emphasized that they would definitely succeed, especially since Ellie inherited martial arts techniques from the Graham family. Then Ellie told a story that her grandparents always talked about Tina's greatness, and that made both of them very proud. However, according to Tina, what was extraordinary was Alan. Therefore, both of them would try not to disappoint Alan. Suddenly, Ellie felt dizzy. After bathing, Alan was seen using wind magic to dry their hair. Alan explained that he always used that magic on Karen, who would become their senior if they passed the exam. Long story short, the next day arrived. Tina and Ellie were asked to practice again. Alan explained that their victory only required one attack that hit him. And unexpectedly, when the practice began, they successfully deceived Alan with perfect teamwork. They even made Alan lose. After Alan lost, Alan immediately asked them to rest to save stamina for tomorrow's final exam. When night fell, Alan returned to the library to find answers to his curiosity about the ice bird that came out of Tina's body. Soon after, Tina approached him. This made Alan curious. Tina explained that she couldn't sleep and decided to go to her garden. But when she saw the library light on, Tina went to check. And there she found Alan. On this occasion, Tina asked whether she could pass the exam and go to the royal capital. Alan realized that was what kept Tina from sleeping. Therefore, Alan emphasized that Tina and Ellie were very talented and would definitely pass the final exam. Hearing that, Tina became more calm. On this occasion as well, Tina told a story about when she was little. Her mother always read her picture books about magic. This made Tina admire the powerful spells used by people in legends. Even until now, Tina remembered all the pictures in those books, namely the green jade bird, the healer, the lion covered in fire, and the ice bird that could freeze everything. Tina also believed that powerful spells really existed. And the reason Tina really wanted to go to the capital was to prove that what was told in the books was real. Tina emphasized that Alan was the first person to know her true desire. However, Alan was instead daydreaming, thinking about the ice bird. Then Alan informed her that in every magic formula book that Alan taught Tina actually contained symbols from Rosa, alias Tina's mother. In other words, her mother cared deeply for Tina, even though she had passed away. This made Tina feel happy as well as sad. So Tina immediately promised she would pass tomorrow's exam. Long story short, the time for the final exam had arrived. Selly was seen waiting for Tina and Ellie to give encouragement. Selly even gave them the late Rose's magic wand that was entrusted to him. Clearly, this made Tina happy and more enthusiastic, while Selly was very moved because his task had finally been accomplished. Then Selly asked Alan to follow him to watch from the VIP seats. There, Alan realized that the wizard who would be Tina and Ellie's opponent was Walter, and Walter cast a perception barrier spell to hide his true identity. In the arena, Walter explained that to take the Royal Academy entrance exam, they both had to defeat him first. Therefore, Walter asked them to fight with full strength. Before it began, Graham explained that this arena had been installed with protective barriers, so they could fight with all their might. Then when the match started, Walter moved first. Walter was so overwhelmed by Ellie and Tina's perfect teamwork. They even made Walter trapped in dark magic and attacked from two directions. However, he was easily thrown back by Walter, so Walter became serious. He immediately used high-level magic, the Twin Ice Pillar spell. This magic made the surrounding area very cold. This made Ellie panic and lose focus when trying to activate magic. Fortunately, Tina calmed Ellie down. Even Alan, who was sitting in the audience, encouraged both of them who looked panicked. And then what happened? Again, with Ellie and Tina's cooperation, Walter's magic was destroyed. Alan, witnessing Tina's progress, felt proud. Even Selly felt very happy to the point of shedding tears, because Tina's efforts all this time to learn were not in vain. After successfully withstanding Walter's attack, Tina felt that was enough to prove that both of them deserved to pass the final exam and were ready to continue to the Royal Academy entrance exam. Even Ellie asked Walter to surrender unconditionally. However, Walter instead used the family's signature spell to test their mental strength, namely the Ice Wolf summoning spell. Alan, realizing that the magic protection wouldn't be able to withstand Walter's magic, immediately asked the spectators to evacuate. Then Alan entered the arena to replace Graham as referee, because Alan was accustomed to handling such dangers. So Alan provided the military-grade barrier scroll sent by the professor to protect the arena area. Tina never imagined that her father's magic could be used by someone else. This made Ellie and Tina afraid. But now Ellie reminded Tina to be confident, because the one who taught them magic was Alan, the genius. So to be able to enter the Royal Academy, both of them faced Walter's ultimate spell. Then when Alan was about to help Ellie and Tina, suddenly both of them refused Alan and asked Alan not to interfere, because they would face him. But what happened? By remembering Alan in their minds, they unleashed high-level magic that could hold back the snowstorm wolf. However, that was still not enough to destroy it. Even Walter gave a little pressure with a strong enough attack to force them to use their ultimate spell. Then Alan asked Tina to try the same spell as Walter, because Alan believed Tina's intelligence in reading spell formulas would make Tina easily practice it. Even Alan was very confident Tina would succeed. Not to mention, Alan asked Ellie to help Tina. Thanks to encouragement from their beloved teacher, both of them successfully used magic that could summon a snowstorm wolf, although the wolf size was slightly smaller. However, that was very helpful to them. After that, Tina tied her ribbon to her wand, because her mother once said, tying a ribbon to a magic wand is a sign that she's getting serious. Tina strongly believed in the fairy tales her mother always read. Therefore, Tina would deploy all the mana energy she possessed, until creating an iceberg wrapped in her mother's hopes. The destruction of the Ice Wolf made Walter very surprised, as if seeing Rosa, his wife. And finally, Walter admitted defeat. Long story short, Tina and Ellie were escorted to the train that would take them to the Royal Academy. Before leaving, Tina said goodbye to her battered father. Her father now understood Rosa's true desire, and he allowed Tina to see the wider world. And her father was willing to erase the worry that always haunted his thoughts. But when they boarded the train, Graham and Walter reminded Alan not to do anything inappropriate with their daughter and granddaughter.
君を信用している。青娘に手を出されたその時、末娘に手を出したその時は。
ではオートでお待ちしています。